So today what we're going to do first is I want to get you started on probiotics, because one of the things that we are very bereft of in our culture is fermented vegetables, and that's really what we should be eating a lot of during the winter time. So we would have traditionally would have taken our harvest from the fall. We would have done a whole bunch of preserving and brines, you know, those big buckets of pickles that are in salt and sauerkraut, and you can make all kinds of fermented vegetables. You can ferment guacamole and hummus and lots of things. So we'll be doing a whole workshop on that, but to get you started on something very, very simple that you can do that takes no time, it's like making tea, is miso, which is a fermented soybean. No, it doesn't have to be soybean. Sometimes it's rice, sometimes it's barley. I think they've made it from oats too, but definitely those three I know of. But the most common kind is soybean paste. So when in Japan, before they serve a meal, you get a little small bowl of soup. If you've been to a Japanese restaurant, you might have had that, and that's miso soup. And it's given at the beginning of a meal because it has these probiotic bacteria in it that helps you digest your food. So this is a very, very easy way to start incorporating a bit more probiotics into your diets from food. And the pH of miso is the same as the pH of our blood. So when you take miso in, there's this calming effect that is, I often will go and have a cup of miso soup if I'm feeling a little emotionally out of whack or upset about something. It's a very, very calming thing to do for the central nervous. Well, this miso you can find miso in the regular grocery stores now, like the ones that carry a lot, like Superstore. I don't know about Sobeys, I don't get there often.
What section would it be in?
In Superstore, I know they have some organic miso in the organic section.
Right.
It's a very small little package, and you're going to pay an arm and a leg for it.
Okay.
But it is organic, and I mean, you don't use a lot of it each time, but you can get, this is a non-GMO, so it's not genetically modified soybeans, and you want to make sure you do get one that says that at least. And you can get this at the Asian food store for, it's under $10.
So you just take a little spoon of that.
We're gonna
mix
make
with
it.
water?
Yeah. So everyone's going to get a little cup, and you're going to get a bit of a taste here. So it's just simple. I've got some boiling hot water in here. And the one thing you need to know about miso is you don't want to put boiling hot water directly in it, because it's got living bacteria for the gut, and if you pour the boiling water into it, it will destroy that. And it has an off taste too. I once went to a Japanese restaurant and they were trying to pass off some miso soup that had been boiled. And they brought it to me and I tasted it and I said, no, this has been boiled. And the guy was shocked that I knew.
That you could recognize the flavor.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
how much time do you have to really wait after you've boiled the water?
Well, you're going to make it, so what you're going to do is you're going to make a paste. And actually, I need to wash my hands. So the first thing about cooking, especially if you're cooking for other people, is you tie your hair back and you give your hands a good wash and you do your nail beds and you do in between too. And you're supposed to sing happy birthday 2 times twice. Or 2 times, and 1 time for children, because they'll do it slowly, and twice for adults, because we'll go, happy birthday to you.
So true.
And ideally, if if you were working in a professional kitchen, you would have a hand washing sink that would be separate from, but unfortunately I don't have that. So, I'm gonna, I never measure things. I always do it by taste. I used to measure things when I first started, and it's very helpful in the beginning. So I'm just going to see if a teaspoon is enough. And then what you want to do here is add just a little bit of cold water. And because it's a paste, it's really nice. It makes it a lot easier to do it this way. I've tried once I've got all the water in there, and it just makes it harder. So you make a bit of a paste. It doesn't have to be all mixed in, but the more you do it, the easier it will be. And then say give it 3 squirts. And now let me taste this and see if that's going to be good. Oh, that's good.
Perfect.
That's pretty good. Now, it will depend on how much you have sweated today or yesterday, if that tastes salty enough to you. So you do it, you put as much in until you get a nice flavor that tastes good, that's not too salty. But I would say we'll all start with like a teaspoon, and then you'll add some more. This is a bit of a scant teaspoon. So what happens when we don't have enough healthy bacteria in our gut is that's what lines our gut, and that's what we get hydrochloric acid in our guts to digest food, right? That's nasty. That'll burn a hole through metal. And the only thing that protects our gut from this hydrochloric acid is healthy bacteria. And so when we don't have that in our diets on a regular basis, then we are starting to it starts to eat away at the lining of the gut and the lining of the intestinal tract as well eventually, but usually it will start in the stomach. And you get small little holes where undigested food particles start to go through and enter the bloodstream, and the body sees that as a foreign invader, right? The body does not know how to deal with undigested food particles going directly into the tissues in the bloodstream. So then what happens? Your body starts off an immune response, right? An autoimmune response, and starts attacking itself. So keeping the integrity of the lining of the gut is very, very important. And how do you know if your gut lining is in trouble? Well, you can't digest as well as you used to. You have acid reflux, you have burping, you start to eliminate foods from your diet because things that used to be okay for you are no longer working for you. So people will do things like they go on elimination diets, they take the dairy out, and then I feel a lot better. They feel a lot better for a little while, but they've not addressed the problem. So then the next thing that happens is they take out dairy, then they'll take out wheat, and then they'll take out meat, and then they'll go to raw foods, and then they're really, really sick at that point, and the digestion has been so destroyed, and the root problem has never been fixed, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
One more aqua cup.
Okay, so I'm going to just because it's close quarters for a few people, I'll put some water in here for a few of you.
Is that called leaky gut? Is that the same thing as leaky gut?
Yes.
I heard the term leaky gut.
Yeah. Leaky gut, that's exactly what it is. And then now we have SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. So now we have bacteria that should be staying in the large intestine, coming up through the cecal valve, going into the small intestine, and causing a lot of problems there. This is a very serious issue. The other way you know if you don't have enough probiotics in your system is if you have constipation or diarrhea. That's often an issue. Okay, so I'm going to give everyone a cup, and you're going to make your little taste with your spoons. Well, not that spoon. The other thing about miso is you're going to have to stir it as you drink it because it will settle a little bit. And don't worry about getting it all totally done. So, okay, Sherry. It'll be just easier if I do it. Now you're going to taste it, and if you need more miso in there, if it doesn't taste salty enough or it doesn't taste good to you, it means you just need more. That's all. Generally, it's going to have a little bit of tofu in it, soft tofu. And the other thing you can add to this that they often will add is a little bit of dark sesame oil on top. So if you like dark sesame oil, I have some here, and you can drizzle a little bit also on. Anybody need any water? Oh, that's perfect. Pat's had lots of times to make hers into a perfect taste.
I find it incredible that before they knew about probiotics and such,
Yeah.
Turkey and Greece and everybody makes yogurt in India, obviously, and has it with their meals, and they have the probiotics in their soup.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
Lassi for the end of the meal.
Oh yeah,
With the
lassi.
yogurt.
Lassi.
Mm-hmm.
Lassi, not lassie like the dog. Lassi.
At the meditation center, it was Lassi.
That's because
Nobody, correct,
I
nobody
know.
in all those years, like
Lassi. Well,
That's
I was there, so I got
100-year-old.
told.
Lassi.
So if anyone wants a few drops of dark sesame oil, if you haven't had it before,
I never had what you
give
put
it
in
a
the
small
dish.
and make sure that you like it. You don't need much. So what I'm pouring into Kim's is just, is it actually going to come out? Do I need,
It's
it's not
new.
even out.
It's got a top.
Oh, now it's going to,
Now it's
this
gonna pour out.
this has no proper lid to it.
Excellent,
So
thank
it's
you.
just going to pour right out, so be very, very careful. So this is different than your regular sesame oil that you would cook with and put on your skin. So this, and I buy this in bulk because I make a medicated oil for myself and some clients in the winter. But this is your unroasted and this is your roasted. You can see the difference in color, right? So they've toasted the sesame seeds before they, but you wouldn't want to put this on your body.
And you don't need to put it in the fridge.
And you don't
Because I
need
used to
put it
have
in
mine in the fridge, and then I read somewhere it didn't have to be. So,
No.
okay.
Most oils are going to be, especially, like a sesame oil like this is going to be very stable. It doesn't need to be refrigerated. And you should be going through oil enough that it's not going rancid.
Right.
So most people are afraid of saturated fat because of years of misinformation from the pharmaceutical and sugar industry. So the problem is really sugar that has been the big inflammatory issue, and hydrogenated oils that have caused all the high blood pressure, heart disease, all that stuff. So there are no studies that link saturated fat to heart disease.
Absolutely none.
None.
And it's really becoming public.
Yeah.
Now, like
Yeah.
mainstream has caught up. Almost every day there's something on the radio or the TV.
Now, what we're gonna make a really lovely soup today.
That one was.
And I love soup in the winter because it's very hydrating. Most people in the world start their day with a brothy hot soup or a brothy hot kind of porridge, right? They're not doing this cold cereal and cold milk thing that we do here, which is not very helpful to the diet, to the health at all. And always before I start, I sharpen my knife, and I'm using a French chef's knife, and if you don't have one of these, you're going to want to get one, because you're going to learn some knife skills if you don't have knife skills, because that makes chopping fun. If you don't know what you're doing in the kitchen, then it doesn't feel like much fun, right? So Elizabeth, my sous chef for the day. Oh yeah, if you've got cups, just hand them to me.
We won't eat them.
No. Okay, so I don't want to get ahead of myself. The first thing I want to do is put my rice on because we're going to have the soup with it, a little bit of rice. I'm just using a white jasmine rice. We will use brown rice as well, but for today, this will go nicely with the soup. I've rinsed this 3 times, and the easiest way I've found to do that is to just put it in a strainer, fill it up, scrub it a bit, dump it out, do it 3 times, and here you go. And I'm going to put this in my Instant Pot. And in the Instant Pot, usually when you're making rice, it's 2 to 1. 2 cups of liquid, whether it be water, or often I'll use a mix of chicken broth and water. But it's usually 2 to 1. In the Instant Pot, it's 1 to 1. So
Why is that, Sophie?
because it loses no moisture at all, and that cuts down on it. If you're using chicken broth,
Yeah.
you're using
Same,
all your
same.
chicken broth. It's not being boiled away as you cook your rice. How many people have an Instant Pot here? Sherry got one.
I just got one, but
Yeah, I only recommend the don't bother buying the cheaper $99 version because it doesn't have the saute function, and you really want the saute function because it's one of the reasons why I like it so much. I'm going to add a little bit of coconut oil to that. We're going to use coconut oil today. Usually in the winter I'm using ghee a lot, and we will make ghee next time. Some of you have done that before. But the coconut oil, and I got a little bit on my hands, so I might as well rub it in. It's wonderful for the skin. And the coconut oil is really helpful in cleaning out the liver. It's an excellent medium chain saturated fat, so it's very stable. It's easy to digest. It gives us a lot of energy, and if you're struggling with sugar addiction or having stable energy during the day, coconut oil will really help you out with that. It's a very easy to access fuel for the body. It's excellent for people with any kind of brain issues, dementia, Alzheimer's, all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so you want to make rice in your Instant Pot. I tend to leave off the T and people think I'm saying Instapot. Instant Pot. And all you have to do for the rice, for the white rice, is hit the rice setting on the Instant Pot.
And how long will it take, Sophie?
And that's going to take 12 minutes. But that's 12 minutes of cooking, and then 10 minutes you leave it on warm, and then it's ready to go.
It's a naive question, but
Nope.
you rinse your rice 3 times. How come?
The first 2 rinses are still very starchy. So if you don't rinse that rice, number one, the countries where rice is made is very dusty. The white rice has been processed, so it's had a little bit of that travel dust, I'll call it, washed off through that process. But you want to give it a rinse for sure, at least one. So if I'm really lazy, I'll just put it in the colander there and run it under cold water, and that's what I'll do. So at least do that. But if you don't rinse your rice, especially with white rice, brown rice, it doesn't matter so much, but I do wash it because of the dust. If you don't wash your rice, it's going to be sticky. And anyone who knows rice cooking will know that you didn't rinse it. But, if you, it's not the end of the world if you make sticky rice. So if you, the lid is separate, but you don't have to buy this. Any lid that's this size, it's a standard size.
Right.
So I have a casserole lid that also fits. So it was an unnecessary purchase. Okay, I'm going to try to think about this how I would logically usually do it instead of getting all ahead of myself here. So the first thing I'm going to do when I start cooking, and this is how I make myself cook. I know if you're a single person, it's hard to get yourself cooking for yourself sometimes. If you've got a family, it's easier. But I know since the shift of becoming single, some days, it's just, I don't want to cook for myself, right? I have people over a lot, that helps. But the other thing that I do when I'm feeling lazy like that is I just say, okay, hit the saute function. So as soon as I hit that saute function, it's starting to heat up and I think, okay, chop an onion. So when we're, and that's how I make myself do it. You're going to hold your knife with your thumb on the blade and your hands like this. This gives you a strong grip. This is not a good grip for chopping. You see this all the time on TV, people pretending to be chefs and they're doing this, right? Like this. And the first thing you want to do is get a, how can we make it so everyone can see? Can you guys see now?
I can see that Kim's.
It's okay. Yeah.
Kim?
Yeah, I'm good.
Not too bad?
Yeah.
So the first thing we're going to do is cut off this end of the onion. And I keep my onions in the fridge and I never have problems with crying.
Oh.
Anything that's cold is not as juicy, and that includes people. So you know the term frigid? It's true. And okay, so now I have a stable base to cut from, right? And this is the end. If you cut this end off, it's going to start to irritate you a little more. So you leave that end on, and you peel away. If it's difficult, I just take the one whole layer off, but sometimes you can just get the skin. And I'm going to place my fingers on top. I'm not going to push down real hard, or I won't be able to get the knife through. And you'll see people do it this way first and then this way. Other people do it this way first, then this way. It doesn't really matter. I find both work. And I'm going to make vertical slices, but I'm making them a little bit on an angle away from myself. And I want these to be finely chopped. So I'm using my fingers, and particularly the back of this one, but you got to keep all of them back like this. Where you're going to cut yourself is you get lazy and your fingers start to,
Oh my god.
But if you keep them back like this, what you're doing is using your fingers to guide your knife. So I can cut with my eyes closed because you're going by feel, right? So then when I come up here, I've got my fingers like this, and I'm just moving my hand back enough. And in the beginning, you're going to be slow, and then you'll pick up a little bit of speed. And I could go a little faster, but you want to be comfortable, and there's no sense taking any chances. Just go slow until you learn, right? Do I want one or two? So the Instant Pot's going to tell me when it's hot. And it will say hot. So Sherry, you'll let me know when it says it's hot. And I know I have a goodly amount of time. And I'm angling the knife a little away from me.
No, hot.
And I'm saying a little prayer that I don't cut myself in front of everybody. It happens occasionally. You'll often see chefs, once in a while they'll have a Band-Aid here or there. And it's because you've gotten distracted and you're not paying attention. So that's more likely to happen to me when I'm teaching. But we won't put that out there. Everything's going to be fine, because it's a pain when you do cut yourself, because you have to wear gloves if you're cooking for other people. So I'm going to put in a good tablespoon or two. You guys will have this recipe. It's all printed out, so you don't have to write the recipe down. And I think I've written ghee or coconut oil in the recipe. You could also use sesame oil. Is it hot yet?
Yep.
Okay. So now I'm putting the oil in, and it will melt, of course, and then we'll add the onions. So what we're making is a green Thai curry coconut soup. And the reason we're using, so one of the tenets in Ayurveda is to eat seasonally, right? And local. Is coconut seasonal or local?
No.
No. So why am I using it in a recipe in the winter here in Canada? Well, because coconut oil has properties that many of you here will be very helpful to you even in the winter. The cleaning out the liver, being a good fuel source. And if anyone's hot and bothered, it's the coolest of the saturated fats. And the only other thing you need to know about the Instant Pot when you put it on the rice is that if you don't have your pressure valve in the right spot, that's going to happen, okay? And you'll know it because you'll hear it, so you'll...
So it should be silent.
Yes,
you're
it should
saying,
be
okay.
silent when it's cooking. Okay. And this is a handy little gadget that bakers use, and it's been wonderful. I could have had all this chopped up, but I wanted you to see how I would generally cook. Because I'm usually prepping and cooking at the same time. So we're going to add a bit of ginger and garlic. If you want to stay healthy in the winter, this will help you out a lot.
Why do you always peel ginger?
Pardon?
Why do we always peel ginger?
You don't have to.
But almost everybody does.
It's a bit fibrous. Like if I were gonna roast something with ginger in it, I might not. But if I'm in a soup, yeah, I want a bit more.
It's just in so many vegetables they say keep on the skin because the nutrients are right below the skin.
Yeah, only if it's organic.
Yes, yes. And organic ginger is really expensive.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we have gotten to the place that we have with our food. So, because this garlic, I could chop this garlic too, and I would do it the same way that I did the onion. But because I'm making a soup, I'm going to crush it.
Do you use Indonesian ginger?
I'm sorry?
Indonesian ginger?
If I can get it, yeah. I don't get up to the Asian food store that much, so this is just I don't think it's not Canadian. Okay, so this is green Thai curry paste. Listen up, guys. Hello? This is green Thai curry paste. This is really tasty. It's hot. It's got chilies in it. So I'm only going to add a couple teaspoons to this. Flat teaspoons for myself. I would probably add a little more, but I know there are some people who can't deal with heat. Now, usually I would put coconut oil in at this point, but it's going to burn here soon because I'm talking and slower than I would usually do. So I'm just going to add a little water to keep it from burning until I open up my coconut
So,
milk.
Sophie, where do you get the green curry? Where did you get that?
You're going to get this at the Asian food store. They do have a variety, and the PC makes one. It's not nearly as hot. You'll probably use a fair bit more. It costs a lot more, and you get a tiny little jar. So it's up to you.
So the curry paste, is it in like spices section or soup section?
International section. In the international section. They have all the Indian
In the
food.
United? Or at PC, like Superstore?
At PC, it's
That's
Superstore.
no.
Yeah. If you go to the Asian food store, I don't know what section it's in.
Yeah.
It's like it's all Asian, right?
Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
Asian, yeah.
But it's on the shelf.
Not necessarily.
Just ask the girl in the store.
Well,
Yeah.
If they can understand.
Okay,
Which they don't.
so I've got this going. I'm going to turn this off because I've gotten a little bit behind. Can you turn that off to warm off? Just hit it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want this to burn. you can put any vegetables you want in here, okay? We're gonna use some sweet potatoes, some kale, some sweet peas, and I'm gonna put in some chicken and chicken broth. And Lisa, if you want me to leave yours out and put the chicken in last, I can do that as well. Now, if you want to leave the skin on your sweet potatoes, that's fine. The first thing you want to do again is get a flat surface. And then you're going to use that flat surface to get another smaller flat surface. And I want to chop these somewhat fine. The smaller you chop, the sooner your dish is going to be done. This is a bit too thick, so I'm going to make, this is called a high cut. When you have it on a flat surface and bring your knife up like that. So usually your knife is on the table, so the tip of it will be on the table, and it's a rowing motion. But you want to make sure your shoulders aren't tense or your face isn't tense, that you're relaxed as you're moving along. And I think that will be enough. I'm just going to chop the vegetables first because I'm getting a little behind when I'm cooking. And that is just fine. So yeah, if something comes up, just turn it off. You can come back to it. So there's going to be a can in your recipe I've done for 4 servings, which would be 1 can of coconut and 1 of these chicken broth. If you have a smaller can of coconut and the chicken broth, that's okay. It's going to be good either way, all right? I think we'll probably use 1 in a bit.
That's beef.
Oh, thank you. I'll open that one. Chicken broth heals the gut. Western way, you know, when you were sick, they would make you chicken soup. Well, there was a reason for that, because it has gut healing bacteria, gut healing properties, so that when you were ill, in every traditional culture, there's a dish that feeds people who are not well. And that dish will often have easy to digest but very deeply nutritious food, which chicken broth is. So we're going to put that in and some kale. So this has already been washed. I don't have a good stem to hold on to, just because the stems have gotten a little mushy in the fridge. When you want to move something on your, don't scrape the edge of your knife. You can wreck your blade that way. Use the back of it. And you'll see chefs do this, but I learned from a chef who said, "No, what are you doing to your knife?" You know. So some people will just do this with their fingers. You know, you can do that too. I find I usually end up having to fuss with it a bit, and because I've got my knife here. Ellie, do you need some water?
Maybe.
Yep.
Thanks.
So I'm going to chop this up fine, and there's many ways. There's a really fun little chiffonade way where you roll it and then you chop it really fine. You get these little ribbons. That's quite nice. But I'm just going to do it in a very quick way today because I'm showing you the quick and easy way. The other thing that's really lovely in here, and you can switch it up in the spring, is leeks. You put leeks in this soup. Very nice. But they're a little harder to deal with. I mean, they take more washing and chopping.
Do you put it in instead of the onion?
Yeah, I put it in instead of the
Yeah, they're hard to wash.
Well,
You have to rinse them in water, like in floating water, and go like this so that
It's
the
all in between the
dirt.
layers.
I know.
yeah. And so I rinse it first to get the dirt out of the layers, and then as much as I can, then I chop it all up. Then I put it in my colander in a big bowl of water, rinse, like this, and then let the. So if you do it that way, I've tried it other ways, and it just takes more time. Okay. Can you hit the saute function, Sherry or Ellie? Thank you. We'll get back to work here. And what else do we need for this? We've got the chicken and
Peas, you
sweet
said.
peas. So In this corner, will be the sweet peas. Alright. These are going to go in at the end, so they really didn't have to come out right now, but here they are. So once we get this going, this is not going to take very long. And what I did with the chicken, this is just one of those roasted takeout chickens, okay? So, and now you can get them that they're free from hormones. The one you got wasn't, but
No, they said it depends, like,
on the
if
day.
they send them, and if not, they can't order them.
If you shop, some places have Blue Goose in our area selling organic chickens for a very reasonable price, the whole chicken, and chicken pieces, but then you're going to have to roast it. So,
I've never heard of that. Where have you heard
up
of that?
Sobeys.
Oh.
Yeah, so depending where you shop, you're going to have access to different things. Next time I'll chop everything, but I want you to get the technique down, and I'm going to make a small video with just the chopping so you can see it really easily, and I'll send that out when it's done. Okay. I can also send you a link to the chef that I learned from, because he's got a great video. Alright, so now I'm going to put the rest of the coconut milk in. Simple as that.
So you know that cream on the top, is it just the same as the coconut oil there? Or
No.
is it something different?
Yeah. It's coconut cream. Yeah, so there's coconut cream, coconut oil, coconut water. Now I could have rinsed that out with the chicken broth, but I forgot. That would have been a more economical thing to do. Okay. I watched the chef online, and he's always saying, now don't do what I just did.
I want a can opener.
That's a great can opener.
That's amazing.
Yeah. This is one that leaves no sharp edges,
Oh,
and then you just pick the lid off, so you're never going to cut yourself with a sharp can. Okay. So can someone put this on soup for me? So you got to hit the off button first, and then you're going to put it on soup. And I'm going to have a little taste of this, and how I do that so that I don't use spoon after spoon after spoon. I just want to taste it for saltiness at the moment, and for flavor in terms of the green curry paste. Because now would be the time to put more in if I want to put more in, but... Okay. That'll be hot enough for you guys.
That sounded like a jolt.
Oh, I noticed after that.
Okay, so I will put a little more. Did I use all that up?
No.
put it in
Put it
the
on.
Oh,
He said you'd have it.
I'll take some more. Thank you. Yeah, I'll thin this down a little bit because it is a little on the spicy side, but we are going to serve it with rice too, so. If you have access to curry leaves, and I don't very often, I love these things.
Where did you get them from? I
At
tried
the
getting
Indian
them.
food store. The only place I've ever gotten them is the Indian food store. And they don't always have them, but give it a little rub and give it a smell. I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 in there. So is it on soup now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it's on. Yeah.
So it will come to a boil. The one thing about the Instant Pot is it doesn't do one of those really low simmers. So the only way you can kind of get that really low simmer is to use the slow cook function. And you can adjust it to high, medium, low on your adjust function. Okay. So we're going to let that come to a boil. It's going to cook until the potatoes are pretty much soft. I'm going to throw the kale and the peas in. I'm going to take out... She's going to do the chicken broth, but not the pieces of chicken. And then we're going to do a little get in touch with your gut. moment. Many people, when we're sitting down to eat, we've got our minds are thinking, we're thinking about what we got to do next. We got so much time to eat, or there's chaos around us. Oftentimes, I'll go into to a restaurant and walk out again because it's just too darn noisy and to digest food. You can't digest well in a chaotic environment. You can't digest well if you're standing up. So eating at a counter, standing up, not a good practice on a regular basis. Once in a while, anything is okay if you're fairly healthy, but you don't want to be doing these practices that cause problems over time in the long run. So to digest well, you have to have the breath a certain way. If your breath is up in your chest, if your shoulders are lifting towards your head when you breathe, if nothing's happening here, this should be moving. So if that's not happening, then your digestion is not going to be as good as it could be because you're in fight or flight mode. So one of the things that we're going to spend a whole session on, as soon as I can think I can fit it in, is going to be working with the breath. Because the breath determines your whole physiology. And if it's this high kind of lifting thing that most people in the West do, women, we hold here and we breathe up here. We had a whole generation of corsets in the West. So you have to have movement here. It has to be relaxed. The body should be relaxed. If we're tense and anxious and up in our minds, number one, we're not going to be in touch with how hungry we are. And so we're going to eat from that emotional place. So if you have problems with overeating or binge eating, you want to check where your breath is before you eat that bag of cookies or whatever it is you're going to go for, because you're probably going to be high in the chest and your mind's going to be, going about something or another. So that's a key part of health. You cannot be optimally healthy. There's lots of healthy people that are not getting sick, but the measure of health in Ayurveda is not just that you don't get sick, it's that you are alive and vital and you have energy all day long, you have good sleep at night, you don't have to worry about constipation or diarrhea. Everything's just kind of working like clockwork, and you're happy. So if you're not happy, your health is going to suffer. And so whenever you go through a life event where things are, where you've had a stressor or something external that's been upsetting to you, and for me it was the last couple of years leaving my ex-partner, so I knew I had to be extra careful for a couple of years. Like, you really have to take care of yourself when you go through a life stressor. And it required more meditation for me to keep even close to being even keel emotionally, especially in the beginning. I had to really put into place all the things I've learned through Ayurveda and yoga in order to keep myself healthy through that experience. And I have not had a cold in many, many, many years. So frequent colds, people think these are normal. They're not. They're a sign that you have a weakened immune system, that things aren't functioning well. Any symptom that you have, small little symptoms we should be paying attention to so that we don't end up going into a more extreme direction. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the 6 directions of imbalance that we can go into and that will cause disease. And we want to catch these imbalances before they become disease. So when you go to your medical doctor, they have no clue. They don't even ask you. You can only talk about one thing now, and you get 10 minutes. To an Ayurvedic doctor, that's insane, because they're going to ask you questions about all aspects of your life to get a full picture of what is actually happening and what is the root cause. If your doctor doesn't know how you live your life, how can they help you? They never ask you about, some doctors are getting better at asking about stress, and they might recommend yoga even, which is great. So there's been a little shift there. But what is on offer in Ayurveda is so in-depth and brilliant that it's almost criminal at this point that it's not being welcomed by the West, because allopathic doctors could work very well with naturopaths and Ayurvedic doctors and traditional Chinese medicine. It could be a lovely system, but they've done everything they can to suppress it because the pharmaceutical companies are making billions. So there are people that are do not care about our health, who are running the health system, and basically have been lying to us for decades now. So, and some people feel they need to mince words about this, but I'm getting too old to do that anymore. I really don't care. If you're feeling stressed, the more stress stress is all, some things are stressful, right? We would all say, yes, that's stressful. Other people feel stress over things that some of us would say, well, that wouldn't bother me. Some people are more sensitive than others, right? We have different body types, so the thinner, finer bone people are going to be a little more shaky when it comes to emotional distress. Not always. Sometimes the Kaphas have a hard time too because they feel it a lot. They're very heart-centered. So miso soup is very helpful when you're going through stress. So is coconut oil. So I will often, if I'm feeling out of sorts, or I feel a little anxious, or I feel like I need some good energy, I'll take a tablespoon of this and just down it. The one thing you need to know about coconut oil is if your liver is congested and you take a whole tablespoon of coconut oil just on its own, you may have a flush. It's going to flush out your liver. And if you may get some symptoms. So nausea, maybe some bloating, maybe some skin eruptions. So any of those kind of signs, then you know it's too much for you. So I always suggest that when you're first starting coconut oil, unless you're cooking with it, it's a bit different. You're not going to, 1 tablespoon in all that soup is not a lot. But that you start with 1 teaspoon and see how that goes. And if you're wanting to lose weight, have a teaspoon of this before you eat a meal. And do it once a day. And if you're okay, then add another teaspoon to another meal. So, you do 1 teaspoon a day, then you can go 2 teaspoons. And then if you're still fine with that, then go for it. So people who live, I once knew this Jamaican fella, and he was the first person I saw do this. He would just take a tablespoon and down it. And he said, oh, it's very good for you. We do it all the time in Jamaica, man, whatever. So this is a lovely, lovely addition to anyone's diet. It's not local, it's not seasonal, but because most of us have some level of inflammation, it's not a bad thing for us to be using in our diet. So there are some things that even Ayurvedic doctors online will make exceptions for, and coconut is one of them. So.
Yeah. Now, one thing about the coconut oil that I didn't know, you told me it was cooling.
No. Everything in Ayurveda, you have to, this is in comparison to everything else. You cannot say this one thing is cooling.
Right.
Well, and we do say that because of language. It would take us forever to talk about it otherwise. But on the spectrum of oils, coconut oil is the most cooling. And it does have a bit of a refrigerating effect to the body. So it is classified as a more cooling fat. But it's still a fat, so it does have that quality of energy to burn, right? But yeah, it is of all the fats, this would be your most cooling. So for people who are inflamed, have a congested liver, which is probably everybody here to some extent because we live in the West, and I do a lot of things to help myself, but I had a pretty rough start in life, so I have to be a little more careful